Uh,
Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress, and I'll be your host for the next hour. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll now begin the final chapter of this book, Rome and Civil Liberty by James A. Wiley. It's entitled Development of Jesuitism. This probably is one of the most important chapters in the book. I hope my listeners will listen carefully, and above and beyond all else, do your own research into the history of the Jesuit order. And you will discover, what I have discovered, is that they are the vanguard of the papal aggression worldwide. And it is with the Jesuits that we have to deal and discover their machinations in this country and the power that they wield, and put an end to it. With Christ's help, let it be so, in Jesus' name. The development of Jesuitism. James A. Wiley writes, "The Church of Rome has in our day undergone a remarkable change. The spread of ultramontanism has more thoroughly compacted and knit together that church, the Church of Rome, than she ever was before. It has given her a unity of a higher type than she possessed even during the palmy days of her Gregories and her Innocents. In those ages she had, as it were, a double head, the Pope and the Council, who contested between them the dazzling prize of the spiritual sovereignty." Now let me comment here. Many of my listeners are well aware of this, but many new listeners are unaware that in even the heyday of the papacy, when the papacy wielded the most power in the world and persecuted God's people, the Pope had always a contest with the council of the church. You see, during those days, the real power structure of the church was sharply divided. The Pope on one side struggling for his own sovereignty and control of the church, and then the assemblage of the councils, the bishops. And the council represented, as it were, more the people and the nations over which the papacy sought to rule. And so when the papacy seemed to stretch his authority a bit too far, the council would put him in check. And many times the councils ruled against the popes, and many times tried to overthrow the papacy. And so there was a constant struggle within the Roman Catholic Church, the Pope versus the council. Who was going to win out in every controversy? And the papacy, to achieve what its ultimate goal was, to become the sole supreme sovereign in the world with no opposition, had to eventually, through a period of time and struggle and Jesuitical machinations, remove the power from the council and vest all authority of the church into the head of the Pope. In other words, in our day, we would say a consolidation of power in the papacy to do away with this internal power struggle between the popes and the councils. And that was achieved, in fact, officially in 1870, just 5 years after the writing of this book, but it was in the process of culmination long before Vatican Council I of 1870. So the ultramontanism that he is talking about is the vesting of all of the church's authority in the headship of the Pope. That is the definition of ultramontanism, the consolidation of all the power of the church in the headship of the Pope. The Pope is the one to be consulted. The Pope is the one who directs the church. What he says is as if God were speaking. And the councils must concede. And any opposition must be voluntarily put down or overthrown. And so now we see the advancement of this ultramontane achievement and its final configuration. Ultramontanism has run its complete course, and now, at the time of the writing of this book, all the power of the church is vested solely in the breast of the Pope. And he said the spread of ultramontanism has more thoroughly compacted and knit together that church than she ever was before. It has given her a unity of a higher type that she possessed even during the palmy days of the Gregories and the Innocents. In those ages, she had, as it were, a double head, the Pope and the Council, who contested between them the dazzling prize of the spiritual sovereignty. This war is now at an end. The Council has been vanquished, and the Pope remains master of the field. There is now but one authority in the Roman body, the chair of Peter, whose superhuman prerogatives have extinguished all other pretense of authority and power. This prodigious centralization enables the Pope at any moment and for any purpose to call into action the whole resources of the Roman Church. He has but to speak, and the whole body is in motion to earth's extremities. Okay? The Pope speaks, and the world trembles. He says all councils, all bishops, all priests recognize in him, the Pope, their one and only chief. This is ultramontanism. It is the highest possible development of the Roman organization. It is the last refinement of the Roman policy. Now, James A. Wiley might have also said that Romanism has reached its final maturity now that the Pope is the single sovereign of that church, a global church that he can command with a single word to go into action all over the world, wherever it is necessary. He's like the supreme commander of a global army that never question his authority, that never question his dictates, and simply do, as a matter of conscience, as a matter of eternal salvation, whatever the Pope speaks. Now, he continues by saying, nor can it be said that there are any longer national churches within the pale of Roman Catholicism. Now remember, and I'll even admit on the air right now, I've often referred to the American Roman Catholic Church as being unique from every other Roman Catholic Church in the world. Mostly because it has to deal with with a Protestant population. And so it must conduct itself differently than the Roman Catholic Church of a Roman Catholic nation, which already has full sway and no opposition, where the government has adopted Roman Catholicism as the religion of the country and as the superintendent over the government. But when it comes to ultramontanism and the power and the strength of the papacy, there is not a whit to distinguish the American Roman Catholic Church from any other Roman Catholic Church in the world. When the Pope speaks, it is as if God was speaking, and that is true in the American Roman Catholic Church as it is in every Roman Catholic Church around the world. So the American Roman Catholic Church may be different, may be different than other Roman Catholic churches in many respects, but in this one respect, they are all the same. They all march to the tune of a single drummer. That is the papacy. And demonstrative of the American Roman Catholic Church, or rather the papacy's power in the United States of America, you saw not long ago both political parties in this country all assembled under one roof, with the guest speaker being this man of sin, the son of perdition in Rome. And so now you have a clear picture of how much influence and power the papacy has over the national church of the United States of America. It is no longer a national church. It is an ultramontane church. It is a Roman Catholic church. It is a papal church, and it answers to the Pope and to no one else. All right. He says this is ultramontanism. It is the highest possible development of the Roman organization. It is the last refinement of the Roman policy. Okay? Don't expect any other huge changes in the Roman Catholic Church. Their goal has been achieved. All authority now rests in the breast of the Pope. He says, nor can it be said that there are any longer national churches within the pale of Roman Catholicism. The Church of Rome in former days was to some extent a congeries of churches, bound together by a common relation to and a common dependence upon the mother church. Each enjoyed a certain measure of liberty, and the French church, as all know, was permitted a tolerable share of independence. Remember we talked about the Gallican church in France? They were a national church. They were a French Roman Catholic Church, and they had their own style of government. And their style of government was, the Pope can be the spiritual leader of the church, but he will not control our government as he insists upon doing. Okay? The Gallicans demanded a separation of church and state. That the religion of Roman Catholicism might well be the national church, but it should not and will not have control over the government. This is where the Jesuits stepped in and destroyed those French Catholic liberties and made them slaves just like all Roman Catholics around the world. The same will be achieved in the United States of America. All national churches that seem to differ from the official policy of Rome their independence will be erased. Just like the power of the councils were erased, so will the power of the national churches be erased, and they will respond to the voice of Rome, or else. All right, James A. Wiley's making this perfectly clear, and even in 1865. So no one can doubt that there's been any hindrance in the development of this unity in the Roman Catholic Church, no matter what land you're talking about. He says, the French church, as all know, was permitted a tolerable share of independence. But now this state of things is at an end. All geographical boundaries have been blotted out. Okay? All geographical boundaries have been blotted out. Look, if the world's going to have one governor, then there ought to be just one global boundary, right? National independence, national identity is going to have to succumb to the one supreme power. There's not going to be any more opportunity within confined borders, separate from others, to oppose the Pope. Okay, they achieved this first unity, this erasing of boundaries, the erasing of borders in the spiritual realm, uniting the Roman Catholic Church independent of any boundaries. Okay, the Pope wiped away all spiritual boundaries in the world. Now, the mission of the Roman Catholic Church is to erase all political boundaries too. Because after all, the Pope is going to rule the whole world. The Pope already does rule the whole world, and there cannot be an Americanism and a Europeanism and an Africanism. They all must be Poperyism. All right, so now you see the amalgamation of the races, the amalgamation of the religions, the mixing of peoples and cultures, and forced immigration, and just jumbling up the whole world. Europe is now absorbing untold millions of people out of the Middle East, completely going to change the culture of Europe. And the purpose of all this is to destroy nationalism, to make Europe a global entity, that there be equal representation in Europe of every cult and every religion and every political persuasion, and increase the confusion and the contention so much that the world will beg for a consolidation of power and someone to preserve everyone's rights. The same is happening in the United States today with all the illegal immigration, they call it. It's forced immigration into the United States to destroy the nationalism of the country, to make it lose its culture, its personal identity, so that that identity can eventually be changed, so that America will just see itself as just one community in a global community. All right. I hope I'm describing this in terms that people can understand. I mean, look, you live in a house, you have a family, the man, the wife, the children. You have an identity. You have a family culture. You have a family religion. You live in a particular neighborhood. Everything is static. Everything, there's no great change or upheaval or anything, just day-to-day business. But if all of a sudden there were 4 or 5 other people moved into the house that you didn't know, they were the same, they were of different color skin, they were of a different religion, they all ate different things, and you were forced to give them room and board and help them sustain themselves and maintain their diversities, eventually your family would lose its identity, wouldn't it? All right? You would feel like you would become a member of a new family, a different family. All right? So that's what they're doing on a global scale. That's what the Vatican is doing on a global scale. Destroying your boundaries. Destroying your identity so that you can be given a new one. And it's going to be horrendous what the papacy is doing. And the whole object of it is to destroy biblical Christianity. The purpose ultimately to be achieved by all of this is to destroy biblical Christianity, to make Bible-believing Christians a minority in every land. And it's working. And no one seems to be able to put their finger on what the objective of all this upheaval is. And even those who have heard it for the first time and seem to understand, it's going to be a vague subject. It's going to be hard for people to visualize what is happening until you do your own research and begin to see for yourself what Rome is doing. He says there is no longer a French world or a Spanish world. There is but a Roman world. Okay? Remember, this was written in 1865. This is 150, 160 years old. He says, James A. Wiley, the Protestant historian, says there is no longer a French world or a Spanish world. There is but a Roman world. Now, do you understand? James A. Wiley is basically telling you there is a new world order. In 1865, he said there was a new world order. Nations have lost their identities. And now we see them losing their borders. He says the various national ecclesiasticisms with their national synods have been absorbed into the one colossal ecclesiasticism of Rome. It has come to be ecclesiastically as aforetime when the empire had culminated. It was politically urbis et orbis. All centers in the Vatican, and the behests given forth from that divine seat of sole authority, although uttered by the feeble Pio Nono, or Pope Pius IX, Pio Nono as he was known at the time, tongue-in-cheek, find a more universal and unhesitating response than they did when spoken by the astute Hildebrand. All right, Hildebrand was one of the most powerful, one of the most ultramontane popes of history. But Pope Pius IX, who was the reigning pope in 1865 at the time of the writing of this book, had more power consolidated around himself than any previous pope. Now, Hildebrand is just renowned for a power-grabbing monarch, and Pio Nono was infinitely more powerful than even Pope Hildebrand. Now he says, if then the papacy has dropped or professed to have dropped its temporal pretensions, in other words, its King of Kings status, it has vastly strengthened its spiritual power. The change is wise, for as the times go, it will more thoroughly compass its political ends by using only the spiritual sword. And we saw the example of this used over and over and over again in the previous book that we read here, The Global Vatican. You see, the papacy achieves its temporal dominance in the world by simply being the spiritual dominator of the world. And the papacy has put most of its power now clandestinely. Its temporal power is centered in its spiritual power, is what I'm trying to say. Now he says, if then the papacy has dropped or professed to have dropped its temporal pretensions, it has vastly strengthened its spiritual power. The change is wise, for as the times go, it will more thoroughly compass its political ends by using only the spiritual sword. In other days, it sometimes happened that the pontiff, when carrying matters with a high hand as regarding kings, in other words, in a great controversy with national kings, the pope had to submit to opposition and defeat from his own bishops. Okay? The bishops, in many cases, were chosen by the king of the nation. And this is why the pope struggled continually to pick all the bishops of every nation so that they would serve him and not the king of the nation in which they served. So it oftentimes became, when the pope had a controversy with a king, many times, since the bishops were loyal to the king, they opposed the pope. Okay, this was another obstacle that the church had to overcome. That's why it had to overcome the councils. He says, in other days it sometimes happened that the pontiff, when carrying matters with a high hand as regarding kings, had to submit to opposition and defeat from his own bishops. This was especially true of the French clergy. From a comparatively remote period, we can trace two parties and two opinions in the Gallican Church. But since the days of Pascal and Bossuet, this division has been public and palpable. The national clergy always struggled against the absorption with which they were ever threatened by the centralizing despotism of Rome. So even the national churches knew that they were being gobbled up little by little by the papacy. We'll be back right after this.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back from the break. You're listening to the second half hour of Inquisition Update on First Amendment Radio. And if you'd like to support this program, please support First Amendment Radio, who sponsors it. And if you'd like to email me, please do so. My email address is tom@seawaves.us. Now, the papacy has to destroy national boundaries. And he did. He destroyed the spiritual boundaries and the temporal boundaries of every nation. Rome always had to suffer conflict with its own bishops because the bishops were loyal to the countries in which they lived. And when the papacy tread upon the rights and privileges of the governments of those nations, the bishops oftentimes went to war with their own pope. Leave us alone. You can be the spiritual leader of the church, just stay out of politics. This is the example of the Gallican Roman Catholic Church. All right. Those days where the clergy, the bishops, were loyal to the nations in which they lived and in opposition against the papacy at times, those days are gone at the time of the writing of this book, 1865. There is no longer a French church. There is no longer a Spanish church. There is no longer a Portuguese church. There is no longer an Austrian church. There is a Roman Catholic Church in every nation, and they answer to the papacy. And whenever you see an American Roman Catholic bishop stand before the cameras of this country speaking authoritatively as if he were an American, you must know he is lying through his teeth. He is first, foremost, and forever a Roman subject. And whenever that American Roman Catholic bishop gathers up, say, in this country, the Pope of Rome has gathered up, say, in this country. He says the national clergy always struggled against the absorption with which they were ever threatened by the centralizing despotism of Rome. Okay, this was a constant fear of the bishops in the national churches that Rome was going to take them over. And they would no longer be Austrian bishops or French bishops or Spanish or Portuguese bishops. They would be Roman bishops. You see, even the bishops of Rome enjoyed their national identities, but those are gone. He says, hence the Gallican liberties, which were a struggle not more for reform in doctrine than for national independence. It may be questioned how far such liberties as the Gallican are possible under the papacy. Certain it is their maintenance is inconsistent with the fundamental principles of its rule. The common saying that Rome is the mother church, or rather the mother and mistress of all churches, seems to put self-government or independent rights out of the question. All the more so when it is remembered that Rome is an infallible mother. Okay, Rome, this was the big controversy even at the time of the writing of this book. The Pope Pius the Ninth, Pope Pio IX, was about to call into assembly Vatican Council I, where it would be officially written and become a matter of Roman Catholic canon law that the council has no more authority in the church, that all power now is vested in the breast of the papacy, and he is not only the single sole solitary ruler of the church, he is infallible. Okay, this arrogates to the papacy a divine attribute. How can you question or even argue with infallible power? And all the kings, not only all the bishops of the Roman Catholic Church, but all the kings of the earth knew what this represented. And James A. Wiley knew what this represented. There was no more self-government. There was no more independent of rights. Those were all out of the question. All government resides in the breast of the Pope. The issuance of all rights is the sole prerogative of the papacy. Now he says such claims on the part of individual churches have been simply tolerated, not sanctioned by Rome. She has ever viewed them in the light of schisms and rebellions, and the steady aim of her policy has been to annihilate all such pretensions and to reduce all churches on the face of the earth not more to unquestioning submission to her creed than to slavish obedience to her sway. And insofar as the papacy has come short of this in any particular country, it has to the same extent come short of a full and perfect development of itself. So what James A. Wiley's just told you is, to the extent that Rome has fallen short of this ultimate goal, that goal will be maintained until it is achieved. Global, unquestioning authority. Now, you hear people, even the members, you listening to this broadcast this morning, you have talked about this global government. You talk about the powers that be. You talk about the status quo or the New World Order. Those are all terms to describe what James A. Wiley has just described to you. Sole global authority in the Pope. Now, my listeners can put a name and a face on the New World Order, on the global monarch. He is the one who has striven for nearly 2,000 years to achieve this ultimate goal. It is now full in our faces, and it's time to quit using those innocuous terms to describe the papacy. They, them, the powers that be, the New World Order. It's now the papacy. And if you fail in any further discussion on these topics, not to mention that the papacy is the they and the them and the powers that be, you have helped to mislead not only yourself but everyone around you. Don't be a part of the cover that the papacy absolutely must maintain until it has achieved its complete submission by all the nations of the world. It's time for the people of this world to have an opportunity to protest the papacy's power. You cannot protest the papacy's power if you do not know that the papacy has the power, is the power. You cannot enter a debate with any hope of success if you're unable to identify that single face, that single name who is ultimately responsible for all of the upheaval in this world, to drive this world into global suppression and global submission to the papacy. Okay, it's time to stop mincing words. It's time to stop using the very words that we've been indoctrinated to use, conditioned to use to help to protect the one global authority that has enslaved us all. It's time to put political and religious it's time to stop worrying about political and religious sensibilities and start talking about bricks and mortar. Let the chips fall where they may. Now, we don't go out and just intentionally try to offend people, but we cannot mince words anymore because we become part of the deception if we do. All right? If someone breaks into your house and robs you of all your goods and you know his name and his face, when you call the police for police intervention and they come to your house asking you if you know who did this, well, they did it, or the powers that be did it. No, you tell them exactly his name and his face. Describe him in particulars so that the police has even a chance of apprehending the criminal. We have to come face to face with who our enemy is. We can't be part of protecting his identity. Yes, you're going to offend some Roman Catholics. Yes, you're going to offend some ecumenical evangelibellies who think the Roman Catholic Church is the Church of Jesus Christ. But what price is there to pay for the truth? How much does your national sovereignty mean to you? How much does your Protestantism mean to you? How much does the Bible, how much does Jesus Christ mean to you? You can't preserve your right to worship God according to the written Word of God and the dictates of the Holy Spirit unless you're able to identify who has robbed you of those rights. All right? She has ever viewed them in the light of schisms and rebellions. All right? Any church that calls itself Gallican or American or French or Spanish or Portuguese or Austrian, instead of Roman, they are in schism and rebellion. To whatever degree the American Roman Catholic Church sees it as an American Roman Catholic Church, to that same degree it is in schism and rebellion against the infallible authority of their spiritual and temporal ruler in Rome. And he says the steady aim of Rome's policy has been to annihilate all such pretensions of national identity and to reduce all churches on the face of the earth, not just Roman Catholic churches, but all churches. In other words, a global ecumenical church. Every church on the face of the earth, not more to unquestioning submission to her creed than to slavish obedience to her sway. And insofar as the papacy has come short of this in any particular country, it has to the same extent come short of a full and perfect development of itself. The perfect and full development of the Roman Catholic Church is to be the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and the Savior of every man, woman, and child on the planet. In other words, to replace Christ. He says, and so far, after a long and glorious struggle which forms the brightest page in the history of France, that which records the Huguenot struggle accepted, the Jansenists were vanquished. All right, the Jansenists were a Roman Catholic sect that believed some Protestant beliefs, that grace was the means by which we were saved, not membership into the Roman Catholic Church. I can't go into all the details of Jansenism right now, but they were seen as schismatic Roman Catholics. They were the ones, along with the Gallicans, that raised offense against the papacy in France. They were destroyed. Okay? The Jansenists were vanquished. Gallicanism, with its Augustinian doctrine of grace, completely disappeared. Okay? Jansenism and Gallicanism, which had common beliefs, Protestant in kind, beliefs about God's grace, they were completely destroyed by Rome. He says the energetic spirit of Bossuet, the mild benevolence of Fenelon, the noble patriotism and daring genius of Pascal have left the French clergy. All right, there's no more independent French Roman Catholic Church. It is not a French church anymore. It is a Roman church. It is dominated by the papacy, thanks to the Jesuits. He says the 40,000 priests of France who share amongst them upwards of 40 millions of francs of state money, taxpayer money, it's a nationally endowed church, are almost to a man ultramontane and Jesuit. Neither the French nor any other church is now anything. And the See of Rome is everything, he says. Okay? James A. Wiley's told us in no uncertain terms, in numerous ways, it is now a Roman church. No more national identities. He says ultramontanism is just the logical development of the Romish system. All right, this ultramontanism, the extreme sole supremacy of the papacy has always been the objective of the Roman Church. The New World Order is not new at all. It's as ancient as the Roman Catholic Church itself. This is what Rome has been striving for 2,000 years. James A. Wiley in 1865 is saying it is all but a done deal. And here we are in 2016 still talking about a new world order as if we don't have a clue what it is. When James A. Wiley was declaring it in 1865 and identifying exactly, precisely what it was and what it did to national and international sovereignties. And he took the words right out of the mouth of Ambassador Francis Rooney in the previous book we read, The Global Vatican. Or did Francis Rooney take the words right out of James A. Wiley's mouth? Make no mistake, there's no mistake about this. James A. Wiley was correct, so was Francis Rooney. There's nothing new at all about this New World Order. It's as ancient as Ultramontanism is, and Ultramontanism is as old as the papacy itself. It is the ultimate goal of achievement, ultimate goal of conquest for the papacy, to put down all national and personal independence and to make us all subjects, nationally and individually, subjects of the Roman Pontiff. Excuse me. He says, towards that issue, has it been steadily tending ever since the Council of Trent. Okay? James A. Wiley marks in particular the Council of Trent because it was so significant in a new surge of energy to Ultramontanism was the Council of Trent. And it was led by the Jesuits, who were created for one purpose and one purpose only, and that was to defeat any opposition to the full achievement of the papal goal: supreme, unquestioned, infallible, global supremacy for the papacy. It really got its justification and its organization at the Council of Trent under the leadership of the Jesuits. He says, toward that issue it has been steadily tending ever since the Council of Trent, and having now reached it, the Church of Rome possesses a homogeneity of nature, a oneness of aim, a unity of policy, and a power of prompt and combined action of which she could boast in no former age. So James A. Wiley is laying at the feet of the Jesuit order and the Council of Trent the laurels for this ultimate papal conquest, which James A. Wiley says has fully reached maturity in 1865 at the time of the writing of this book. I mean, you know, sometimes when you feel like you're really getting a handle on this New World Order, here comes somebody like James A. Wiley and said, buddy, you are really sandbagging. This was a done deal in 1865, and you're still talking about like it's something that's going to happen in the future or something that's happening right now. James A. Wiley says, I declared it fully matured, fully developed, fully in practice and operating in 1865. So I stand corrected by James A. Wiley. And as much as I can possibly do it, I'm going to stop speaking in terms as though this New World Order has not already been achieved. What is still in the progress of achievement is my comprehension of the reality of it. Comprehending the full maturity of it. It's taken me time, but I hope to help lift some of my listeners to a higher understanding as I achieve it myself. He says, another phase has passed upon the popery of our day, a consequence of a greater ultramontanism of the body, even the rapid and portentous growth of societies, more or less secret, all under the direction of the Jesuits. Now, James A. Wiley is talking about secret societies. You remember the ones that President John F. Kennedy talked about in his secret society speech? These are the ones James A. Wiley's talking about. See, Jesuitism doesn't always operate under its own name. Jesuitism is a conglomeration, a global conglomeration of organizations, secret and open, that are seemingly unconnected and many times seemingly diametrically opposed to Rome, but who all serve the Jesuit general. I'm just going to name one of them. I could spend the rest of the program naming them all, and I don't even know them all. But Freemasonry. Believe it or not, Freemasonry is one of the most powerful Jesuit organizations in this country and the world, and seemingly opposed to Roman Catholicism, seemingly at war with Roman Catholicism at times. But Freemasonry ultimately serves the Jesuit general and does it secretly, and even outside the knowledge and understanding of its own membership. You see, it's better for the membership of Freemasonry not to know the ultimate purpose and direction that the Freemasonry is taking them. Otherwise, they might rebel. But Freemasonry accomplishes more for Jesuitism, more for Popery, more for Ultramontanism than it does for the societies in which the communities in which they live. Jesuitism has learned better than any other organization in the world how to cloak its operations. And it does it through secret societies. Freemasonry is only one of multitudes of secret societies. Do you belong to a secret society? Have you sworn oaths to keep secrets? John F. Kennedy knew all about these secret societies, and he condemned them. Why? Because he knew they ultimately served the Jesuit order against which he had declared war. And that's why he's dead today. He began to expose the cloak under which Jesuitism is covered. And they could not afford that disclosure at that time. And they silenced him in broad daylight with cameras rolling, hundreds of witnesses, and nobody went to jail. That's the power of Jesuitism. And they couldn't have accomplished what they did without the help of Freemasonry and the other innumerable secret societies that ultimately serves the Black Pope, the Jesuit general. He says, another phase has passed upon the popery of our day, a consequence of the greater ultramontanism of the body, even the rapid and portentous growth of societies, more or less secret, all under the direction of Jesuitism. The membership of these confraternities is counted in millions. They cover both hemispheres, their object being the aggrandizement of their church, an end which they are at liberty to pursue in any way that seems good to them. Although the names of these societies is already legion, not a year passes that does not see others added to their number, which, like their predecessors, proceed to enroll members by hundreds of thousands. They are all sworn to unconditional obedience, and though they bear various names, they are in reality but one host, whose wing is stretched from the Orient to the Occident, in other words, globally. They are a church within a church, for in truth we have now two churches and two popes. The one church makes itself palpable to the world in its orders, canon laws, and councils. The other, through everywhere present, is nowhere visible. Two complete functioning churches, one visible and one invisible. They all serve Ultramontanism. We'll finish up the book tomorrow on the program. Thanks for listening.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.